Welcome to second lecture of analog IC design on unit 5, that is analog filters. And in yesterday's class we started a discussion on analog filters. We saw the need of an analog filter with respect to specific examples like a mobile phone. We we discussed about the characteristics of filter. So in today's class, we'll start with the various classifications. So how filters are classified. We'll briefly look up the classification and we'll see some details. So in today's class, we'll do a generic study so that we will go to the different filters, something called as first order filters, second order filters from next class onwards. All right. So even classification will be familiar for you guys. Uh, So we will start with classification. There are various ways filters are classified. So we'll look at three different ways how filters are classified. So one is yeah. So filters are classified primarily based on their characteristics. All right. So probably you can relate with that when you say filter characteristics. You can classify filters as the basic four categories: low pass, high pass, band pass, and band reject. Right. So let me write that here. The very first classification of filters is based on the frequency band they pass or reject. All right, so that is the first first classification, and there we can actually classify it as low pass filter, high pass filter, band pass filter, and band stop filter or band reject filter. These are the four classification, and I hope you can definitely at least imagine the response, the cara or which band, which frequency band they will pass or reject by just looking at the name itself, right? So just to elaborate or just to understand the characteristics in a very generic sense, I'll just take out or I'll just draw the responses here. So if you say it is a low pass filter versus a very lower frequency, when you have uh, the magnitude of transfer function will show a response of this nature. That means the low frequencies will be passed or low frequencies will be allowed by the filter, but at a specific frequency, or we say something called as cutoff frequency. After that cutoff frequency, the filter will start attenuating the signals, and completely it will be rejecting the signals on the higher frequency side. That is a low pass filter. So what we are seeing here is the cara of a low pass filter. In a similar way, you have high pass filter where low frequencies are rejected whereas high frequencies are passed in this fashion. uh, so the filter response will be looking like this. Here also we mentioned something called as cutoff frequency. So in a high pass filter, the filter will not allow any signal till cutoff frequency, and after cutoff frequency it will allow all the signals after that. So basically it will pass the frequencies on the higher side. This is a high pass filter, right? Similarly, if you look at the third category, what we have, we will draw in this fashion and we name it as band pass filter. So generally band pass filters and low pass filters are uh, like in from our yesterday's discussion with respect to a receiver, generally band pass and low pass filters come as the major what to say, the main filters what we use in receivers are band pass and low pass. So in band pass filter, again this is the magnitude of transfer function, and we'll define two frequencies. So here in a band pass filter, this filter will specifically allow a band ranging from one frequency f1 to another frequency F2 is a band pass filter. And finally, we have the filter called as band reject filter, where the response is inverse of that of band pass. We call this as band reject filter or band stop filter. Here also, this filter will eliminate or will reject mm, set of frequencies between two like a band between two frequencies, or in certain cases it will actually remove one single frequency, because there are in many applications we will see that certain frequencies, say for example the 50 hertz, at 50 hertz you will typically get a noise signal, and such signals will be rejected with the help of filters called as band reject filter or something called as notch filter. Right. So this is how we generally classify filter. But again, as we discussed yesterday, the ideal response what we expect for all these are, I'll just quickly draw the ideal response also. For a low pass, the ideal response is something like this, a brick wall response. For a high pass, it is like this. And for a band pass, it is like this. And for a band stop, it is like this. This is a brick wall response. But we are looking for, or in practical cases when we try to realize this using various components, we will not be able to get very sharp cutoff frequency or very sharp transition band. Instead what you will get is what you're seeing on the right hand side of the screen. There will be transitions happening. There will be the frequencies will, or the transition band will try to keep it as sharp as possible, but there are certain challenges in doing that, especially when you bring those filters as on chip filters onto the IC. In integrated circuits, we keep filters as off chip as well as on chip. So when you try to bring the filters on chip, when you integrate components onto the chip, there are still more challenges. Yeah, this is what you need to understand about the characteristics of the filters. I hope this is clear, and this is something what you know already, right? Now, yeah, this one thing I'll mark here. So this is the pass band and this is the stop band. Similarly, this is the pass band here. So wherever the signals are passed, we call it as pass band. The other band is actually stop band. All right. Fine. So, all right. The question is, how are the cutoff frequencies defined? Yeah. Yes, Anushka, that's a good question. So, yeah, now you can see there are four different types of filters, and the cutoff frequency are defined basically by looking at the components in the filter. So quickly we'll see one or two examples. I'll take with some components. Say for example, you can look at the very common example of a low pass filter. So low pass filter generally will have two components, the resistor and a capacitor, and those cutoff frequencies are those components will decide or define the cutoff frequency. Is that what you asked, Anushka? Whether your question was how the cutoff frequency is determined, or what decides the cutoff frequency?
Yeah, so something like that, because we had studied, it's not the same thing. I think it's in 12th grade, we had studied that when power is, like that frequency for which power is, like that power by root 2. No, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
power is
all
how
right.
much
Yeah, yeah.
current is by root 2, that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, right. So, yeah, I got your question now. So, say for example, in a low pass filter, we look for a frequency. When you say cutoff frequency, the cutoff frequency is at the point where you have a sharp transition band, or after cutoff frequency, the signals will be totally attenuated, right? But in our case, or when you realize it in practice, we will not have this sharp transition band, right? This transition band will not have. Sorry, rather what you have actually instead of this brick wall response, you will have a transition band, and now we need to define till which frequency or what frequency I can consider as the cutoff frequency. So we define cutoff frequency as a frequency where, as Anushka told, the we generally define in terms of decibels as where your gain falls 3 dB from the maximum. So from maximum, if the gain is falling, um, at what point the gain is falling 3 dB lesser, that specific frequency, that specific point is determined as a cutoff frequency. So if you ask me why 3 dB frequency, yes, that is considered as a standard value. And after that, you will see there is a very sudden roll off, or you will see a sudden fall in the gain, a sudden fall in the gain of the response. All right. I hope that is clear, Anushka, and we'll discuss a little more detail when we take up circuits from now. Yeah. Amitesh, your question is why can't we have a brick wall response? Oh, very good question. Yeah. Yeah. So Amitesh, your question is why can't you have a response of this kind, right? Why we can't have a value or at a specific cutoff frequency? Why can't we get a filter with a sharp transition or a very sharp cutoff, right? Yeah. So the answer to that is we deal with, so whenever we realize these filters, we realize those filters with the help of components, and when we say components, we have resistors, capacitors, inductors as passive components. Now depending on the way you implement the filter, you are relying on realistic components, right? The RLC passive components or the active components. And we know that none of the components are ideal when they come to practice, right? When you use such components, you will have all the practical limitations and all the practical variations with respect to these components, and that will ultimately lead to not having an ideal response of a very sharp cutoff, right? You will get this point a little more clear when we take an example and see how it happens. All right. Probably today itself, today only we'll take one of that kind. I hope that clarifies to some level, Amitesh. Yeah. So we'll quickly see one example. The question, I'll give you the question again. It is to decide how much attenuation we need to have. So the question is this: an engineer wish to amplify a signal in the vicinity of, vicinity means near to, vicinity of 1 kilohertz. So an engineer want to amplify a signal at 1 kilohertz range, but the circuit board and wires. So he is working with a PCB, and the circuit board and the wires pick up a strong 50 hertz component that is basically from the supply line. Now, so that is there is an interference coming from the supply line itself, 50 hertz frequency, and the person is trying to work when very close, like it is the person is trying to work with a frequency of 1 kilo. So now the question is, if this component is 40 dB higher than the desired signal, what filter stop band attenuation is necessary to ensure the signal level remains 20 dB above interferer level. Right. So to visualize this, what you can think is you have something here around 1 kilohertz, and you want to want to amplify this, the data or whatever it is near to 1 kilohertz. But on the lower side, maybe at around 50 hertz, you are actually seeing a noise or a component which is strong undecided signal. And what we need is in order to, yeah, so what type of filter we should use first of all to stop, such that the stop band attenuation, like what filter can provide a stop band attenuation so that the signal level will remain 20 dB above the interferer. All right, yeah, so we'll definitely go for a high pass filter because it did not mention that there are some high frequency undecided signal. The only thing is we need to eliminate the signal which is close to 50 hertz. So now what we can use is a high pass filter as the filter to eliminate this 50 hertz signal. Now how much should be the stop band attenuation of this high pass filter? So what we try to do here is we are trying to actually ensure a filter which can provide this kind of response, right? This is high pass, so it will definitely eliminate the frequency at 50 hertz. Now how much should be the stop band attenuation so that the signal level will remain 20 dB above the interferer level? So now the given condition is this. This component is around 40 dB higher than the desired signal. At the output, the signal level should remain 20 dB above the interferer level. That is what we are expecting at the output. So if I draw the response at the output, what I need is, this is my signal which is around 1 kilohertz, and this should actually remain 20 dB above the interferer. So the interferer should be at least this. This should be 20. If this, sorry, not on this side, on the other side. Right. Now, for this to happen, how much should be the stop band attenuation is the question. I think, yeah. Anushka, you have written the 60. Any other answers? Amitesh, you have written as 20. So how much should be the value? Any more answers? Or whether 60 dB is the required one? Yes, it is 60 dB because you can see that the interferer is 40 dB above the desired signal. Now we need to bring it, or the desired signal should remain 20, at least 20 dB above. That means the stop band attenuation should be minimum 60 dB. That should be minimum 60 dB. Very good. Yes, that's right. All right, so this is another example. So we'll quickly go and finish the classification. So one classification is uh, based on the frequency band they pass or a reject. Now the second classification is based on how we implement the circuit. So the second one is based on the circuit implementation. So when you say the based on circuit implementation, we can classify it into two. One we call as continuous time realization. Continuous time realization, and another one we call it as discrete time realization. What is the meaning of this? Continuous time realization and discrete time realization. So so when you say continuous time realization, that is what the ordinary analog filters what we are talking about. That means with the help of, I'll take one example. Say if I want to implement a low pass filter, I'll take a resistance and I'll take a capacitance like this, and I'll implement. So this, here I'll apply input signal, here I'll apply output. And if I use a resistor and capacitor in this fashion, the response what you get will be a low pass response. We'll see how that is a low pass response shortly. And this kind of implementation is known as continuous time implementation, where you will actually take a continuous signal. So the input here is a continuous signal, and the filter will continuously the filter will work on this continuous time signal and will produce, or the output also will be a continuous time signal, but it will be filtering, like either the in this case it is a low pass filtering, right? Now when it comes to this discrete time realization, what we do is So in continuous time realization, we use a resistor. In place of discrete time in discrete time realization, in place of resistors, so we will not directly use resistors. Rather, resistors will be replaced with something called as switch capacitors, or resistors will be replaced with the help of switches and capacitors. So this is one way. So discrete time realization, or the when we realize resistors using capacitors and switches, um, we eliminate the use of resistors on IC, or bringing in bulky resistors into IC is difficult. In order to eliminate that, or in order to eliminate bulky resistors on ICs, we have a specific technique called as switched capacitor, switched capacitor technique, and uh, in this technique, what we do is we will replace a resistor using MOSFET switches and capacitor. When I say MOSFET switches, it is a MOSFET based switch and capacitor, and this combination of switch and capacitor will give, or will give the same effect of that of a resistor, right? So you'll be wondering what it is exactly. I can show one way how we will realize this RC low pass filter in a discrete time realization. So we'll not go to the details of that, but I'll just show the circuit diagram. So in place of resistor, you will actually keep a switch and a capacitor. Again, one more switch here. So this is switch 1, and this is switch 2, and this is one capacitor, right? Now if you want to make it a low pass filter, so now the resistor is replaced using this. So this is equivalent to a resistor. This is equivalent to a resistor. Now if you want to continue and complete this low pass filter, you should actually add and one more capacitor here, so that this will become a low pass filter, right? All right, so this is called as discrete time realization, and the application of this is, so why you want this kind of realization is basically we use this in data converters. Data converters, where we convert analog signal into digital, we use, or we take the help of this switch capacitor filter. So basically where we with the help of these switches and capacitor, we are actually converting continuous time, continuous amplitude signals into discrete time and discrete amplitude, but not only with the help of switch and capacitor. You will have some more additional circuitry along with this, right? So if you guys are interested to know how this combination will act as a resistor, you can definitely watch watch a lecture on switch capacitors, which is available on my YouTube channel, switch capacitors, and the lectures you can find under the course Analog and Mixed Signal IC Design. So there you will see how we can realize this switch capacitors, or how you can replace resistors using the switches and capacitors. All right, so here for you, I am just telling that there are two ways to implement, and we will be focusing on, in this course we'll be focusing only on continuous time realization, and discrete time realization or the switch capacitors will be dealt in your elective course in your 7th semester, and the elective is named as Mixed Signal IC Design, where you discuss about learn about data converters. All right, any questions here?
Sir, these systems are implemented inside the IC, sir. Is that correct?
Which system?
Sir, sir, this capacitor being replaced by a switch, and I mean the resistor being.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, yeah. Fine. Oh, okay. So that is another classification. Now, coming to the last classification, or how do we classify filters, as one last final category, is based on the way we implement the component. So we call it as passive or active implementation. The meaning is, in passive filters, we realize those passive filters with the help of R, L, and C passive components. And when it comes to active filters, we will actually bring in components other than RLC, or we will use actually some gain block. We'll use some active or gain block. That could be amplifiers, there could be op amps. So that means basically we will bring in transistors or other elements to design a gain block, and this RLC components are used along with that gain block. So that is known as active filters, right? So quickly, if I give a simple example again with the passive filter, if it is low pass, we will draw the filter like this with R and C. But the same thing, if you want to implement the active version, what we will do is we will take an op amp and we'll connect resistor to the input and capacitor in the feedback. So this is an active low pass filter. So this is a low pass filter which is passive. This is an active low pass filter. We call this filter as Sallen and Key filter, that we will be dealing in the second order filters soon in this class. All right. So here it is V in and this is V out. So these are the various ways how we classify filters based on response, based on the filter characteristics, how it pass or reject the set of frequency. We classify them as low pass, high pass, band pass, and band reject. Then based on the realization, whether it is a continuous time realization or discrete time realization, we have two ways. And based on what type of components we use, we do again classify it as passive and active implementation. All right. So this is about filters. Now we'll quickly see how we will write or what is basically a filter transfer function. So have you heard about transfer function before? Any time? What do you mean by transfer function? Oh, okay, Bhuvan, your question is, can a passive RC filter ever have 0 dB gain in passband? So when you say 0 dB gain, what is the gain exactly? 1, yeah. So 1, yeah. So 1 means whatever is your input, you will be actually passing that to the output exactly, right? Yes. So that is possible. So if it is a low pass filter, you can have a filter response with where you will get the input same as, sorry, output as same as the input in the pass band. Yes. We'll see that. Maybe we'll take that example and see how what will be the magnitude of the filter, right? Yeah. So my question is, have you ever heard about transfer function? Any answers to that question? Transfer function? No. Oh, it's the first time you're hearing? All right. So in network analysis, have you ever come across this term of transfer function? Yeah, Anushka, yes, it is h of f. We write it as h of f. All right. Yeah. So so far in AMC or in we have yeah, very good, Aditya. Yeah, thank you for reminding that. Yes, you have definitely used, or we saw that this in noise. Yeah. So in AMC or in AICD, we generally talk about gain. We talk about if there is a circuit, if there is an input and output, we talk about gain, and generally we write gain as, say, AV as V out by V in. Right. So this is how we roughly define gain as, right. But we so this the gain what we have discussed in AICD so far, we have not seen any frequency elements in that, or we did not bring the aspect of frequency. And since we did not bring the aspect of frequency, all these gains are known as open loop gain, or we call it as DC gain. What do you mean by that? That is a gain when even like this, when you mark it, say for example you have a CS amplifier, if you with the CS amplifier, the current source load, the magnitude of gain is actually GM-R0, and this gain is not at all changing, right? Because we are not expressing this as a function of frequency. So say for a CS amplifier with a current source load, your gain is GMR0. And so what is that I have represented here? Across the range of frequency, I'm marking gain as GMR0 itself, right? So this is how we generally study any circuit, because we'll not bring in the frequency picture in the first itself, because that will actually make analysis little more detailed, right? But we know that, so if at all I'm drawing the frequency response of a CS amplifier as GMR0, is this true? Whether you will get the gain of a CS amplifier GMR0 for all frequencies, is that true? No, you will not get the gain as GMR0 for all frequency. If you look at the actual response, you will see that as the frequency increases or after some time, the response will actually deteriorate. It'll gradually decrease, and it will actually fall to a value of 1 or even smaller than that, right? So so that means whatever we are writing as GMR0 is a gain without including the factor of frequency. That is why we call it as open loop gain. So at the time when we bring in frequency element also, or when we bring in the frequency also into picture, that means if I look at output as a function of frequency and input also as a function of frequency, instead of calling it as open loop gain or gain, we generally call this as transfer function, because this is a expressed as a function of frequency. Now, instead of writing it as a function of frequency as f or a simple f, we usually denote in the form of s. So what is this s? We call s as complex frequency. And how will you define this s? S is, how will you define this s? S is defined as sigma plus j omega. That means there is a real part and an imaginary part. This is imaginary part. And real part is actually the real, in sense, the magnitude. It shows the magnitude. This is the magnitude. And imaginary part, it is imaginary part as it is, but this actually shows the orientation of the signal orientation. So how it rotates, how the orientation, basically it is the orientation. All right. So I hope you would have expressed, or you would have come across this term of S as complex frequency in your signal sense systems. And also I think you would have seen this in your network analysis too. So the takeaway here is the complex, we define S as complex frequency having a real and imaginary part. Real part is actually the real value, the magnitude, and even though we call it as imaginary part, that actually shows the orientation, how the wave is actually rotating. That is how we show, or that is how we denote the S as complex frequency, right? And generally for all transfer function, we express in terms of H of S, where there is a real part and an imaginary part, and this is usually plotted, or this is usually visualized on an S plane. We call it as an S plane, where there is a real axis and there is an imaginary axis, right? So this is the concept of complex frequency in very short, and this is how, with the help of complex frequency, we denote a transfer function, right? Now from here on, in all our discussion of filters, we will actually talk about filter transfer function. So to start with, let me start with the very the simple example of low pass filter with two components here. So this is the component R and this is the component of C. This is V out and V in. So we want to write this as a function of frequency. So I'll write this as H of S. What is H of S? H of S is output divided by input. Now how will I write output in terms of input? So output can be written as input voltage into, so this is, you can assume that these are two impedances. That means this is simply acting as a voltage divider. So I can write output as input into the impedance of the capacitor divided by the total impedance. It is R plus 1 by SC. This is simple voltage division what I have applied here, where I have written capacitor as its I have written the reactive component in terms of the XC. XC is 1 by SC. And if I simplify this further, I can write this as V out of S by V in of S as How will I get this? 1 by 1 plus SRC. This is how we denote. Right. So for any transfer function, you can identify there is a numerator and a denominator. And from this transfer function, you can actually get some more information that so from after writing transfer function, we can equate the numerator equal to 0, which will give you zeros of the transfer function. Similarly, you can equate the denominator equal to 0, that will give you poles of the transfer function. I hope you would have heard about zeros and poles. Have you ever heard about zeros and poles? Can I get some response? Oh, this is the first time? Oh, all right. Okay, fine. Yeah, so I'll give you a little more details of this in stability when we do stability. So maybe I'll just review what we have done so far. So what I have told is transfer function is generally written in terms of frequency. Yes, I'll explain, Amitesh. So transfer function is something we write the relation between output and input in terms of frequency. And the frequency here is called as complex frequency, which is having two parts. One is a real part and one is imaginary part. Real part is what is controlling the magnitude, and the imaginary part is basically controlling the orientation of the wave. Now, if I take a simple example of RC, like R and C element connected in this fashion, I can always write the output here as the total voltage available here into the impedance of this divided by total impedance. What is this? How did I write that? It is same as a voltage divider. How will I write? If I have, say, if I have 2 volt here, if both are equal resistors, what is the voltage coming here? This is a voltage division, right? So what is the voltage? What will be the voltage at this point? It is 1. Yeah, same thing only I have applied here and wrote this equation, and from that I obtained a expression for the transfer function. And then what I told is from the transfer function we can actually extract two information. We call it as zeros and poles. So what is 0? If you equate the numerator to 0 and whatever you are getting from there, we call it as 0. In this transfer function there is no 0. Zeros are 0, that is why we cannot identify. Now when you equate the denominator to 0, whatever you are getting are called as poles. So why do we need this? Because we will actually draw something called as pole 0 diagram with the help of this. That is to visualize this better and to capture some more information from the transfer function. So let me quickly find out what is the pole of this. So how to get the pole? I have to take the denominator. Denominator is 1 plus SRC, and it equate that into 0. Then I can say that the value of S is equal to minus 1 by RC, right? Now when I say the value of S is minus 1 by RC, there is no imaginary part, only real part to this. So how will I mark this? As I mentioned, if I draw this sigma and j omega, where this is called as S plane, I can mark it as this point. There is a pole, and what is the value of that pole? Which is minus 1 by RC, right? So probably you would have definitely seen this S-plane representation of poles in your signal sense system, where you would have also defined the stability of a system by looking at the poles. If the poles exist on the left hand side of S-plane, you would have identified the system as a stable one. All right. Yeah. So with one more thing, I am just winding up for the day, and we'll continue in the next class. So if you look at the transfer function, if I plot the transfer function as a function of frequency, basically omega or f, yeah. So how will you mark it? So when your S or when your omega is 0, what is your transfer function? V out by V in, that will be equal to 1. So it will start from 1, and as the value of S increases, the magnitude of so what I'm marking here is actually the magnitude magnitude of h of s, right? So as I keep on increasing the frequency, the magnitude will actually drop, right? So now this frequency where it starts dropping is basically what we called as, or what we marked as, this frequency, the pole frequency. Or just for now I'll just mark it as omega p, right? And you will see that there is a sudden, or there is a decrease in the gain soon after this particular frequency. This we call it as cutoff frequency, or that is basically given by the poles of the transfer function, right? So with this I am winding up for today, and we will continue and we will discuss more on the transfer function by taking up a few more circuits. We'll find what is a pole and what is a zero, and we will see how that affects the frequency response in our coming classes too. So thank you so much for listening for the day. If you have any questions, you can ask now.